The sliding doors of St. Vincent's emergency room opened with a mechanical wheeze, and the Thursday night chaos simply stopped. A nurse, mid-step, froze with a medication tray balanced in her hands. The triage desk went silent. Someone's pen clattered to the floor, the sound impossibly loud in the sudden vacuum of noise. Standing in the entrance was a man who looked like he'd been through a war. Marcus Street Fighter Santos. Everyone in the neighborhood knew that face. Scarred knuckles, cauliflower ear, a crooked nose that had been broken more times than anyone could count. But it wasn't the famous underground boxer that made the ER freeze. It was what he carried. Cradled in his massive arms was a boy, maybe 9 years old, limp as a rag doll. The kid's face was swollen, one eye purple and sealed shut. Blood soaked through his torn jacket. His small frame looked impossibly fragile against Marcus's broad chest. The fighter's white tank top was drenched crimson, his knuckles split and bleeding, but his eyes were wild with something that had nothing to do with his own pain. "Help him," Marcus's voice cracked. "Please, he needs help." Dr. Sarah Chen dropped the chart she was holding. Something primal kicked in her chest, something that bypassed every hospital protocol and went straight to her core. She stepped forward, hands already reaching. "Get me a gurney," she commanded, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. "Pediatric trauma, code red." Marcus didn't wait for the gurney. He moved toward Dr. Chen with surprising gentleness for a man his size. When he transferred the boy into her arms, she nearly buckled from the dead weight and the surge of adrenaline flooding her system. "Gunshot wound, upper chest," Marcus said rapidly. "Maybe 20 minutes ago. He's been breathing but barely. I kept pressure on it." "Trauma Bay 3 now," Dr. Chen shouted, already running. The hospital erupted into motion. Nurses converged. Doctors materialized from nowhere. Equipment rolled on squeaking wheels. Marcus stumbled after them, leaving bloody footprints on the pristine floor. His own shirt was shredded on one side, and if anyone had been paying attention, they would have seen the deep gash running along his ribs. But no one was looking at him. Not yet. The trauma bay doors swung shut with Marcus on the wrong side of them. He pressed his hands against the glass, breathing hard, watching the controlled chaos inside. Blood dripped from his knuckles onto the floor. A security guard approached cautiously. "Sir, you need to step back." Marcus didn't move. "Sir, I'm not leaving him." Marcus's voice was flat, dangerous. The guard hesitated. Inside the trauma bay, Dr. Chen worked with surgical precision. "BP's dropping. Get me 2 units O-neg stat, and someone find out who this kid is." Nurse Tom Rodriguez cut away the boy's jacket, revealing more injuries beneath. Old bruises, yellowing around the edges, cigarette burns on his shoulder. Tom's jaw tightened, but his hand stayed steady. "Jesus," someone whispered. "Not now," Dr. Chen snapped. "Entry wound upper right chest, no exit. Bullet still in there. Get me a chest tube and call surgery. We're going to lose him if we don't move fast." Outside, Marcus finally stepped back from the glass. His legs gave out and he slid down the wall, leaving a red smear behind him. That's when head nurse Patricia Williams noticed the blood. His blood. "Someone get him checked out," she barked. A young resident, Dr. Kevin Park, approached with gloves already on. "Sir, you're injured." "I'm fine." "You're bleeding through your shirt." "Let me look." Marcus's eyes never left the trauma bay. "Is he going to make it?" Dr. Park knelt beside him, carefully lifting the shredded fabric. The gash was deep, probably needed 20 stitches, maybe more. "Let's get you into a room." "Answer my question." Dr. Park followed Marcus's gaze to the trauma bay, where Dr. Chen was elbow deep in saving a child's life. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but she's the best we have." Marcus closed his eyes. For the first time since walking through those doors, something like emotion cracked through his face. Not quite tears, something harder, grief mixed with rage. "He's 9 years old," Marcus said quietly. "His name is Daniel Reyes, and if he dies, it's because I wasn't fast enough." 2 hours earlier, Marcus had been in his gym, the one he ran out of a converted warehouse in the South Side. It wasn't fancy. Concrete floors, heavy bags hanging from rusty chains, the smell of sweat and determination thick in the air. The kids from the neighborhood knew they could come here after school. Safe space. No gangs, no drugs, no questions, just boxing and homework at the fold-out tables in the back. Daniel Reyes had been one of the quiet ones. Small for his age, flinched when you moved too fast, but the kid had heart. Marcus had seen it in his eyes the first time he'd walked through the door 6 months ago. That look that said he'd already seen too much but wasn't ready to give up yet. Marcus was showing Daniel how to wrap his hands properly when the door burst open. 3 men. Marcus recognized 2 of them. Diego Vega's crew, small-time dealers who thought they owned the block. "Marcus Santos," Diego had said, gold teeth flashing. "We need to talk." Marcus had stood slowly, positioning himself between the men and the kids. "Jim's closed to you. Get out." Diego's smile didn't reach his eyes. "See, that's disrespectful. We come to make you a business offer and you—" His gaze slid past Marcus, landed on Daniel. The boy had gone white. "Well, well, little Danny Reyes." Diego's voice turned cold. "Your brother owes me money, kid. A lot of money. And since Carlos decided to run like a coward, guess we gotta send him a message." Everything happened fast after that. Diego pulled a gun. Marcus moved. He was across the room before the man could aim properly. His fighter's instincts taking over. The first punch broke Diego's jaw. The second sent him sprawling. But Diego's finger had already squeezed the trigger. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Daniel crumpled. Marcus didn't think. He just moved. Took down the other 2 men with a brutal efficiency that would make headlines later. One had a knife, which explained the gash in Marcus's side, but they went down. They all went down. And then Marcus was scooping Daniel into his arms, the boy's blood hot and immediate, soaking through both their clothes. He ran. 2 blocks to St. Vincent's, carrying the kid like he weighed nothing, his own wound screaming with every step. Back in the ER, Detective Lisa Morgan arrived with her partner, a young cop named Jimmy Chen. She found Marcus sitting against the wall, now with a bandage around his torso and his hands wrapped in gauze. Dr. Park had stitched him up right there in the hallway because Marcus refused to move. "Mr. Santos," Detective Morgan said, crouching down to his level. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of face that had seen too much but still cared. "I need you to tell me what happened," Marcus told her. All of it. His voice was flat, factual, like he was reporting a boxing match. When he finished, Morgan was quiet for a long moment. "Diego Vega is in custody," she said finally. "His jaw's broken in 3 places. The other 2 aren't much better." "You did that with your bare hands?" "I did what I had to do." "The boy, Daniel, what's his story?" Marcus looked at her. "His brother got mixed up with Diego's crew about a year ago. Owed money, couldn't pay. Carlos disappeared 3 weeks ago. Daniel's been living with an aunt, but she works nights. Kid was basically raising himself." "And you?" "I run the gym. Keep kids off the streets. Keep them safe." His voice cracked on the last word. "I'm supposed to keep them safe." Morgan studied him. This man, this fighter with a brutal reputation, who'd just beaten 3 armed men with his fists to save a child. "You got him here alive," she said gently. "That's what matters." The trauma bay doors finally opened. Dr. Chen emerged, exhausted, her scrubs spattered with blood. Marcus was on his feet instantly. "He's alive," she said, and Marcus's knees almost gave out again. "Barely. The bullet collapsed his lung and nicked his subclavian artery. If you'd gotten him here 5 minutes later—" She didn't finish, didn't need to. "Can I see him?" "ICU, but he's unconscious. It'll be a while before he wakes up if—" She caught herself. "When he wakes up." Marcus nodded. Nurse Patricia appeared with a wheelchair. "You're not walking anywhere," she said firmly. "You just had 23 stitches and you've lost a lot of blood." He wanted to argue, but his body betrayed him. He sank into the chair. They wheeled him to ICU, where Daniel lay in a bed that looked far too big for him. Machines beeped and hissed. A ventilator breathed for him. The boy looked impossibly small and broken. Marcus sat in the chair beside the bed. He reached out with one bandaged hand and carefully touched Daniel's fingers. They were cold. "I'm sorry, kid," he whispered. "I'm so damn sorry." The story hit the news by morning. Underground fighter saves boy from gang shooting. The cameras showed up at the hospital. Reporters crowded the waiting room. Marcus refused all interviews, but someone had leaked security footage of him carrying Daniel through the doors, and the image went viral. The neighborhood erupted. Suddenly everyone had an opinion. Some called him a hero. Others said he was still just a street thug who got lucky. But the kids from the gym, they showed up. 2 dozen of them, standing vigil in the waiting room with their parents, wearing their gym shirts and holding handmade signs. "Thank you, Coach Marcus." Detective Morgan kept digging. What she found made her sick. Daniel's aunt had been doing her best, but she worked 2 jobs and could barely feed herself. Carlos Reyes had been trying to earn money to take care of his little brother when he'd gotten sucked into Diego's operation. When the debt became impossible to pay, Carlos had run, knowing Diego would retaliate. Social services got involved. A tired-looking caseworker named Amanda Reed showed up with a clipboard and questions. Marcus met with her in a private waiting room. "Daniel has no other family," Amanda explained. "His parents died when he was 4. Carlos was 18 when he took custody, but now he's missing. Daniel will need to be placed in the foster system." "No," Marcus's voice was firm. Amanda blinked. "Excuse me?" I said no. The kid stays with me. "Mr. Santos, it's not that simple. There are procedures, background checks, home visits." "Then start them." Marcus leaned forward. "That boy has been coming to my gym for 6 months. He's a good kid, smart, quiet. He needs stability, not to be bounced around the system while he recovers from a gunshot wound." Amanda studied him. This scarred, dangerous-looking man with gentle eyes and bandaged hands. "You have a criminal record. Illegal boxing, assault charges from bar fights when I was younger and stupid. Nothing violent against civilians, nothing against kids, ever. You just put 3 men in the hospital. I saved a child's life. There's a difference." Amanda was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out a stack of forms. "Fill these out. I can't make any promises, but I'll start the paperwork for emergency foster placement pending a full evaluation." Marcus took the forms with shaking hands. Daniel didn't wake up for 4 days. During that time, Marcus never left the hospital. Nurses brought him food he barely touched. Dr. Chen checked on him regularly, adjusting his bandages, making sure he was healing. The kids from the gym rotated through in shifts, keeping him company, doing their homework in the waiting room. On the 4th day, just after dawn, Daniel's eyes fluttered open. Marcus had dozed off in the chair, his head tilted at an uncomfortable angle. He jolted awake when he heard the small, raspy voice. "Coach?" Marcus was at the bedside instantly. "Hey, kid, hey, I'm here." Daniel's working eye focused on him slowly. "You stayed?" "Of course I stayed. Where else would I be?" A tear slid down Daniel's bruised cheek. "My brother. We're looking for him. Detective Morgan has people searching. But right now, you need to focus on getting better. You hear me?" Daniel nodded slightly, wincing. "It hurts." I know it does. But you're going to be okay. You're tough, tougher than you look." "You carried me," Daniel whispered. "I remember. You were running and you kept saying, don't die, kid, don't you dare die." Marcus's throat tightened. "Yeah. Well, you listened, so good job." A ghost of a smile touched Daniel's lips. Then, his face crumpled. "I'm scared." Marcus took the boy's hand carefully, mindful of the IV lines. "I know, but you're not alone anymore. You understand? Whatever happens next, you've got people now. You've got me. But I'm not your kid." "Maybe not by blood," Marcus said quietly, "but that doesn't mean I'm letting you go." The next few weeks were a blur of procedures and paperwork and slow, painful recovery. Daniel had to relearn how to breathe properly. Physical therapy was agonizing. Nightmares woke him screaming. But Marcus was there, always there. The kids from the gym helped too. They visited in shifts, bringing comics and drawings and terrible jokes. They treated Daniel like a hero for surviving, and slowly, the boy started to believe he might actually be okay. Detective Morgan found Carlos Reyes in a motel 3 states away. The older brother had been planning to turn himself in, to trade information on Diego's operation for protection. When he heard Daniel had been shot, he broke down. Morgan let him call from the precinct. Daniel cried through most of the conversation, but they were good tears. Carlos promised he'd get clean, do things right, be the brother Daniel deserved. He'd testify against Diego, and when he finished his community service and probation, he'd come back. They'd figure it out together. Marcus listened from across the room and thought, maybe, just maybe, this could work out. Social services approved emergency placement. Amanda Reed showed up with the paperwork and a soft smile. "He's yours for now," she told Marcus. "But this is temporary. You'll need to complete the full foster certification process." "I'll do whatever it takes." "I believe you will." She glanced at Daniel, who was teaching one of the gym kids how to make origami cranes despite his bandages. "He's lucky to have you." "Other way around," Marcus said. 3 months later, Daniel was cleared to leave the hospital. He'd need ongoing therapy and checkups, but the doctors were cautiously optimistic. The day they brought him home to Marcus's apartment above the gym, 24 kids were waiting with balloons and a hand-painted banner that read, "Welcome home, Danny." Daniel cried. Marcus cried too, though he pretended something was in his eye. That night, after the celebration died down and the kids went home, Daniel sat on the couch in his new room. It wasn't much, just a twin bed, a dresser, posters on the wall that the gym kids had picked out. But it was clean and safe and his. Marcus leaned against the doorframe. "You need anything?" Daniel shook his head, then quietly, "Why did you do it?" "Do what?" "Save me. You could have been killed. You almost were." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed. "When I was your age," he said slowly, "I was angry all the time. My dad left, my mom worked 3 jobs, and I was alone. I got into fights, bad ones, and I was good at it, which made everything worse." Daniel listened intently. "By the time I was 16, I was fighting for money. Underground circuits, no rules, no refs, just 2 guys beating each other until one couldn't stand. I made a name for myself. Street fighter. Like it was something to be proud of." Marcus rubbed his scarred knuckles. "But then I met a guy, old trainer named Jimmy Cruz. He saw me fight, and instead of being impressed, he asked me one question. 'What are you going to do with those hands when you're too old to fight?' What did you say?" I didn't have an answer, and that scared me more than any opponent ever did. Marcus looked at Daniel. "Jimmy taught me that strength isn't about hurting people. It's about protecting them, about using what you've got to make things better, not worse. So you opened the gym." "So I opened the gym, and I swore that any kid who walked through those doors would be safe, would have a place, would matter." Marcus's voice roughened. "When Diego pointed that gun at you, I didn't think. I just knew I'd rather die than let that promise be broken." Daniel was quiet. Then he threw his arms around Marcus's neck and held on tight. Marcus hugged him back, careful of the still healing wounds, and thought about Jimmy Cruz and second chances and kids who deserved better than the hand they'd been dealt. "Thank you," Daniel whispered. "You don't have to thank me, kid. You're family now." 6 months later, Carlos Reyes walked out of community service a changed man. He'd gotten his GED, completed drug counseling, and had a job lined up at a local mechanic shop. He showed up at the gym nervous and thin, but clean. Daniel ran to him. The brothers held each other and cried. Marcus watched from across the room, arms crossed, trying to look stern, but Detective Morgan, who'd stopped by to check on everyone, saw right through it. "You did good, Street Fighter," she said quietly. Marcus shrugged. "Just kept a promise. Most people break those. I'm not most people." Morgan smiled. "No, you're really not." That evening, they had dinner together at the small table in Marcus's apartment. Daniel sat between his brother and Marcus, laughing at a story Carlos was telling about the worst car he'd ever tried to fix. The gym downstairs echoed with the sounds of kids training, the heavy bags thudding rhythmically. Marcus looked around the table at this makeshift family he'd somehow found himself with, and thought about Jimmy Cruz's question. What are you going to do with those hands? Save people, protect them, build something that matters. Daniel caught his eye and grinned, and Marcus smiled back. Yeah, that's exactly what he'd do. A year after the shooting, the gym hosted its first charity boxing exhibition. Marcus hadn't fought in years, but he stepped into the ring one more time to raise money for at-risk youth programs. The place was packed. Kids from the neighborhood, parents, cops, reporters, even Amanda Reed showed up. Before the match started, Marcus took the microphone. He wasn't good with speeches, never had been. But he looked out at the crowd and found Daniel in the front row, sitting with Carlos, both of them wearing matching gym shirts. A wise man once asked me what I was going to do with my hands, Marcus said. I didn't have an answer back then. but I do now." He held up his scarred, taped fists. "These hands were made to fight, but I've learned they were also made to protect, to build, to lift people up when they fall." The crowd was silent. "There's a kid here tonight who reminds me every single day why that matters. Daniel Reyes, stand-up kid." Daniel stood reluctantly, face red. The crowd erupted into applause. Danny survived something no child should ever face, but he's more than a survivor. He's proof that sometimes the best families are the ones we choose, the ones that find us when we need them most. Marcus's voice thickened. "So this fight tonight, it's for every kid who needs a safe place, every brother trying to do right, every person who believes that strength is about more than fists." More applause, louder now. Marcus stepped down and walked to Daniel. He put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You good?" Daniel nodded, eyes shining. "I'm good, coach." "Then let's put on a show." The fight was brutal and beautiful. Marcus was older, slower, but he still had the heart that earned him his nickname. He won by decision, and the crowd went wild. But the real victory came after, when Daniel ran into the ring and Marcus lifted him onto his shoulders, both of them grinning like idiots. That night, after everyone left and the gym was quiet, Marcus and Daniel sat on the ring apron, passing a bottle of water back and forth. "You know what Jimmy Cruz would say if he could see this?" Marcus asked. "What?" "He'd say I finally figured it out." Daniel smiled. "Figured what out?" "What to do with my hands." Marcus ruffled the boy's hair. "Turns out they were made to hold on to the people who matter." Daniel leaned against him, and they sat there in the dim light of the old warehouse gym, surrounded by heavy bags and hope. Sometimes heroes don't come from privilege or perfect circumstances. Sometimes they come from the streets with scarred knuckles and broken noses. Sometimes they're called street fighter, and they carry children through their darkest moments into the light. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, those heroes stick around long enough to remind you that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's just love and choice and refusing to let go.